All right, here we go. All right, good afternoon. I'm Ron Miller, and I do cover the enterprise for TechCrunch, as he just said. And I'm going to discuss the rapid growth of Kubernetes as an ecosystem and how that spawned this whole economic activity and done it extremely quickly, and I mean very fast. So I wrote this article in 2014 about the beauty of open source. And when you have an open source project that works, you build a platform, and people come and they start developing on it, and then companies start building on it, and an economic ecosystem suddenly builds in its wake. But it usually takes two elements, corporate backing and developer buy-in, and it's a huge challenge to get both of those. What we saw with Kubernetes is pretty much unprecedented. It got both. It got the corporate backing, it got developer buy-in, and it really just took off. So last year I wrote this article about how Kubernetes was gaining momentum, and what we saw was that in a period of about 6 weeks, this is between July and the beginning of September, these companies, AWS, Oracle, Microsoft, VMware, and Pivotal, all joined the CNCF. And to get all those companies to come to anything and agree to anything is pretty much, an unprecedented thing. And they came within that small period of time. And you have to ask yourself, why did they do this? Because surely every one of those companies would have preferred to build their own orchestration layer and have you guys using that. But they couldn't do that because people have started using Kubernetes in sufficiently large numbers that it didn't make sense to start trying to use an AWS orchestration layer or a Microsoft corporate orchestration layer or whatever. And so they joined CNCF. And that gave them not just the idea that, okay, now we're going to be using Kubernetes, it also probably gave them a little bit of influence over the project. And that was probably another idea. And you can see these other companies here are also some of the biggest players in enterprise technology. So you need more than the big companies, though, right? You need a community of developers, and that's what the people in this room, for the most part, are. It's a community of developers that have come together and said, we're going to start building stuff on top of Kubernetes, and in a very, very short time. This is not that old a project. And it's not something you see every day with an open source project, and I think that it's unusual. And when that happens, you start to have an economic engine start to build up around it. And it didn't take long for investors to see the potential of this platform. And according to our friends at CNCF, there has been up to this point $4 billion in total investment in Kubernetes and cloud native related projects. And that's a pretty significant sum of money in a short period of time. So I'm going to just discuss a few of those. So we have Hasura, which is a startup that got $1.6 million in seed, and I wrote about them last week, and they're here somewhere, and you can say hello to them this week. We have Heptio, which is a bit more mature, getting $33 million, and we have CoreOS, which of course raised almost $50 million and got sold to Red Hat in January for $250 million. And we have these other companies here that have also had successful exits, and one thing I wanted to note is that when you have Microsoft, Oracle, and Red Hat all buying these relatively young companies, it tells you that people want this technology and they want this talent. And one way to get it is to buy a startup that's offering that kind of talent. So this is just kind of a crazy slide, but it shows you the sheer volume of projects going on at the CNCF. And when you have that kind of ecosystem, it produces a ton of investment, it produces a lot of innovation, and it starts to produce economic activity, which are companies and jobs and all of that stuff that goes with investment and buying and selling companies. And Kubernetes has just become a juggernaut in a really short time. So if this project continues to grow, and chances are it will, and keep this trajectory going, we're going to get more investment, we're going to see companies continue to flow toward containers, and Kubernetes will continue to be a strong engine for economic growth, so much so that the future's so bright, you got to wear shades. Thank you.